I was looking at a dream. It doesn't belong to my present self, it doesn't belong to the old me either, but she is very lonely. Although surrounded by love, I do not feel the slightest satisfaction. To some, the gesture might seem arrogant and uncomfortably cheesy. In this lower realm, how many people grew up not knowing love, and then lost their lives? Maybe my hill self is one of them. However, because she knows what love is better than anyone else, she harbors a void that people who don't understand love will never understand. Because you are not enveloped in love, you can yearn for love. And because I was enveloped in love, I was imprisoned by love and died in it over and over again. Which side is more unlucky, I cannot say. If anything, it's that on the scale of eternity, even love can become a poisonous inferno. In memory, she is crying in the flower field. Covering her face with her hands, large tears fell, and the fields of red flowers dyed in the night seemed to turn into a sea of gold, as she was immersed in sadness. I cannot find. She sighed like that all the time. Eventually, a woman appeared behind her. This is a low dwarf. At first, the somewhat competitive dwarf is taken aback by her beauty and tears. She got up immediately. "Did you see that?" she said. The tears disappeared and her pupils were smeared with silver. "Forget everything you've seen, she's about to enchant." Twitching, the dwarf staggered closer, then threw a vicious punch just as she was about to give the order. "It really is a beautiful hook, which even made me." She landed on the ground with her chin being hit hard. The dwarf caught it and the red petals flew skyward in an instant. Looking at her rubbing her chin and rolling her eyes, the dwarf showed a ghostly look. "Don't use any awkward moves on me. Be careful, I'll fly with you." The dwarf who threw it in the air was very angry. Although she was shaken to be seen crying, the charm was a bit late, but she managed to beat her up before she complied, which also showed that dwarves were indeed very strong. She was stunned and said, "I'm a goddess, huh?" The dwarf snorted. "I don't care what you are." Since she was born, she had never worshipped any transcendent existence and immediately laughed when she heard the dwarf say so boldly. And laughed out loud without hesitation. She fell into the flower field again, curled up like a fetus, clutching her stomach. It wasn't intentional, but it was this dwarf who stole her first time. She became the woman who first hit her. She couldn't stop laughing. "I ask you, what is your name?" "Mia." So she decided to ensnare this disgusting dwarf. Dwarves were born in a mining area. When she went there, the environment here was already very bad and the coal mines were almost gone. All the men were driven away to work as prospectors, leaving only emaciated women and children in the village. To feed these people, the dwarf opened a tavern all by herself, a cantina with only the name of a tavern. I came to know her too because the dwarves were gathering food for this poor area at the time. Gods are not as important as eating. What I want is not some jewels, but ingredients that can fill my stomach. The dwarf knows better than anyone how painful hunger is. I also believe that hot meals are far more valuable than fine jewelry and fine goddesses. It is impossible to have such a scene in perfect heaven where hunger and poverty have no reason. At the same time, she also thought, this is the essence of the lower realm. It is precisely because of imperfection that the unknown, that even the gods cannot foresee was born, and the existence of the dwarves in front of me was lifted. And the representative of the unknown is the hero. Well, what I'm looking for, the Ord was perhaps the hero himself. From there, she began to think so. Are you my hero, Ord? What are you talking about? Stupid goddess. She cast an expectant look, but you could tell the dwarf ignored it. Many gods led by the great god tried their best to dominate it, but the redneck dwarves had no idea of the value it had. I don't even pretend to understand. Perhaps it was because of the circumstances under which the two met, or perhaps it was because dwarves were fearless. I think it must be both. That's why she was able to treat her rudely and even mercilessly beat the goddess of beauty on the ass, who was in the right position and was like a treasure in the world. No matter how strong the familia looked, the dwarves would not change their attitude. Facing warriors much stronger than her, she still hasn't thrown away her pride in being a complete person. The people in this area were all drawn to her and huddled together, as she cooked all the time. Even though she didn't receive the grace, she has a powerful soul that doesn't succumb to the power of the gods. This dwarf is really very strange. And meeting this dwarf made her feel a little redeemed. Mia, I saved your area on my own initiative. Not only did this give them a decent job, but it also made this area never deserted again. You don't have to cook for them, do you? Speaking of which, is there a goddess who is always hungry here? You stupid goddess. She took a great liking to the dwarves and welcomed her into the family with a little bit of strength. The dwarf probably also hated the fact that she owed her a favor for freeing her hometown, so she complained about being given that favor. However, this is conditional. Work with her until the debt is paid. If there are hungry people like in my hometown, I will go there myself. Furthermore, to fulfill the dwarves' long-cherished wish and open a real tavern. This is the quid pro quo. She accepted the concessions. Furthermore, she said, listen to me, Mia. I'm looking for my Ord. I've heard you say that many times. Let's just say I'm not going to be that kind of thing and I'm not going to help you. No problem, I thought you would say that. So I want you to sign a contract with me. A contract. After all, it's you. If I do something that upsets you, you punch me again, right? As long as it's to get my Ord, I'll definitely do whatever it takes. I can be a righteous saint or an ugly witch. So, Mia. Whether I become a good woman or a bad woman, don't get in my way, okay? I'm counting on you, Mia. I know. If there's anyone who can stop her from getting her wish, it's the dwarf in front of her. She had this premonition. So she first accepted the dwarf's conditions and then proposed a contract. Surprisingly, the dwarf readily agreed. Why is this? She thought so. So I immediately thought, this is it, expressing my understanding. After all, the dwarves don't want to see her cry like a miserable little girl anymore. She took the dwarves and continued to search for her Ord. She treasured the dwarves as she traveled through the underworld, which was wider but narrower than the sky. She decided in her heart that she would not use charm to confuse the dwarves. Dwarf women are very noble. She obviously has no glory as an elf, and she is rough and violent, but her will is stronger than anyone else's. She holds dearly the only dwarf who will stand up to her. Although she is much younger than her, she still looks up to the dwarf as her sister in her heart. Then she found that even this strong dwarf, as long as she had a heart, would drive the dwarf crazy because of beauty. If the dwarves also seek her love, she will never be able to cheer up again. The journey continued. Unable to find her Ord, she lowered her shoulders in frustration several times. Only the family that adored her grew stronger each time. One day, she lost to the worst and most cruel goddess, and was imprisoned in the labyrinthine city. As she settles into the center of the world, she still seeks her orb. In the process, she introduced a boar man. From the Isle of Ugly Elves where white and black fought each other, 2 kings were released. She sold her body in the industrial city and obtained quadruplets of tiny humans. In the abandoned world, I found 2 dependent kittens. Horn. Also, saved by her in the slums that winter. Swearing allegiance to her, more and more warriors possess power. But even so, she still couldn't find her orb. The dwarf also made a request to leave her side when the city's dark ages were about to fall. Since that day, giving up her orb, corrupted by the poison of boredom, she has taken to acting. So she made friends. There is another shelter. The resignation to fate that killed the goddess in her heart, everything she saw and the poison of boredom were also neutralized. She loves every day being a girl. I don't know if she found out. Although this is just a game, every day the girl replenishes the gold she spilled, feeding. It was the girl who allowed her to come close to the expectation of her. But, she got there again. In this fantasy dreamed of in the world, I arrived at the beautiful and lonely field of flowers. I can't find it, I can't find it, she's still sighing like that. Since that day, I have been crying. Scream. Scream. Just because you're not by my side. Flower garden, tears of red, gold in full bloom. And let the invisible light guide you and me. Laugh. Laugh. I believe in my heart that we will meet eventually. Somewhere the poem of tears sounded. When her hero orb finally appeared, she was still crying. And I can only stand outside and watch. Who will save her? Come help her. Horn then prayed. However, no one looked for her. She was the one who abandoned them. Sorry, Anya. Sorry, Chloe. Sorry, Lunar. Sorry, Ryu. Sorry, Mia. She cried and apologized. I also apologize. But she still couldn't hold back the tears. The gold was still flowing and her body was gradually visibly melting. I hugged her and said words she shouldn't have known how to say. Come and stop me. Save me.